Hello dear learners. And welcome to this series of e-learning lectures, prepared to help you develop the skills and competencies related to the field of didactics. This is lecture number 8. The direct method. By the end of this lecture, learners will be able to define the principles of the direct method. Identify the typical techniques. The direct method lesson. Know the advantages and shortcomings of the direct method. But, before we move forwards, if you have not been here before, then, welcome to UNIV-ENGLISH channel. If you do like videos like this, then make sure to hit the subscribe button. And also smash the notification bell to receive notifications of when I produce more videos like this. Also, let me know down the comments. What are the difficulties you are facing right now? So, I can use your ideas for future videos. Introduction. The direct method is a result of the opposition to grammar translations method. It emphasizes the assumption that the foreign and second language learners should directly think in English. This method stresses direct thinking and discussion in the second language. It is not based on translation or translating written and oral texts. It emphasizes the use of real-world objects or actions to show what is being communicated. In the direct method, language is regarded as a tool for communication and as something that is generated spontaneously, without consciously translating into another language. It was thought that a learner could make a direct association between L2 and its meaning, without the need to translate. Definition. The direct method is a system of instructing a foreign language using only that language and without focus on the study of grammar. Richards and Rogers, 2007, 6-7, claims that it is no wonder that in the mid and late 19th century the grammar translation approach was questioned and a reform movement in Europe laid the basis for other, at the time new ways of language teaching. According to Thornbury, 2021, this method was developed at the end of the 19th century and challenged the views on grammar teaching held by the grammar translation method. According to Fries, the direct method is a method of teaching a foreign language, especially a modern language, through conversation, discussion, and reading in the language itself, without the use of the pupil's language, translation, and without the study of the formal grammar. Accordingly, this method was developed in order to overcome the shortcomings of the grammar translation method, which was unhelpful to those who wanted to learn a foreign language for communication. This method became popular during the early years of the 20th century. It is called direct because the teaching of the foreign language was done without any resort to the mother tongue. It is based on the assumption that one should learn a foreign language as one would learn one's mother tongue. Teaching in this method takes place entirely in the target language. The learner is not permitted to use his or her native language. Grammar rules are avoided and a strong emphasis is placed on sound pronunciation. Perwarno, 2006, outlined the goals of the direct method. He stated that the direct method attempts to form an intentional connection between thought and expression and between experience and language. Principles of the direct method. According to Franca, 1884, a language could be best taught by using it actively in the classroom rather than using analytical procedures that focus on explanation of grammar rules. In classroom teaching, teachers must encourage direct and spontaneous use of the foreign language to support students' learning. The principles of the direct method may be summarized as follows. Instruction in the classroom was conducted solely in the target language. Only everyday vocabulary and sentences were taught. Oral communication skills were built up in a carefully graded progression organized around question and answer exchanges between teachers and students in small, intensive classes. Grammatical rules were not explicitly taught, but rather learned through intensive listening and imitation, thus memorizing conjugations and rules of grammar is not prioritized, given the importance of speech and oral skills. New teaching points were introduced and discussed orally. Translation is perceived as unproductive practice in foreign language learning. Thus, theatrical presentation, demonstration or pointing at objects are used to explain the meaning of difficult words. Concrete vocabulary was taught through demonstration, objects, and pictures. Abstract vocabulary was taught by association of ideas. Taking advantage of the attention being focused on language skills, reading and writing are postponed until firm ground is secured in listening and speaking. However, students who have advanced literacy skills are free to read literary works for pleasure and comprehension rather than for grammatical analysis. Students are introduced to the foreign culture through inductive learning. Both speech and listening comprehension were taught. Correct pronunciation and grammar were emphasized. A typical direct method lesson. A typical direct method lesson begins with warm-up activities, no matter how you're teaching. The ideal warm-up will be physically active to refresh your students' memories about the previous lessons where the target language is commonly spoken. After warming up, the teacher introduces new material, one term or phrase at a time. The teacher then models how to use the phrases. He may use students in pairs to help acting things out as necessary while doing this. As students try out the phrases, and act out the feelings, the teacher is checking for understanding throughout. The teacher guides pairs of students as they practice asking and answering questions about a given topic. The teacher can point to a picture that will determine their answer. Learners independently practice and choose their own answers, acting out the feelings while they speak. The purpose of the lesson is to develop the learner's communicative skills in the target language. During the lesson, both the teacher and students communicate in the target language. The direct method of teaching, which is sometimes called the natural method, concentrates almost exclusively on the natural order: listening, speaking, reading, and writing. Students are assessed on the correct pronunciation and better oral skills because no native language is used and communication is main activity in the class. Typical techniques. The typical techniques and key premises of the direct method are mainly related to the assumption that second language learning should be much more like first language learning: lots of active oral interaction, spontaneous usage of the language, no translation between the two, and little to no analysis of grammatical rules. To make this process more effective, various techniques and procedures are used, including question and answer activities. Students practice new words and grammar rules by asking and responding questions on full sentences. Reading aloud. Learners have their turn to read sections of a play, passage, or whatever teaching materials. The instructor uses a variety of means to explain the meaning of sections such as pictures, illustrations, realia, examples, etc. Self-correction. Students are supported to self-correct themselves by selecting the answer that seems best to them among the choices related to a given topic. The teacher can answer the question by repeating what the students say and stop him or her on the sentence to signal that something is wrong with the answers. Conversation activities. In order to assess communication skills, the teaching contains conversational exercises, exchanges between teacher and learners, starting with questions in the target language, followed by students asking one another using the same grammar structures. Finally, students are free to carry on and express themselves. Fill-in-blank exercise. Dictation, a normal speed, phrase by phrase, normal speed again. Map drawing, a map with an unknown geographical feature is drawn by the teacher, where the students label the map. Then the teacher switches roles. Paragraph writing, learners write a paragraph in their own terms, by using a model in the teaching materials. Vocabulary teaching through demonstration. The mim-mem technique. Learners are asked to repeat selected foreign language sentences during the class and imitating selected foreign language sentences, expressions and songs. Memorizing. The success of the direct method depends on the teacher's skills and personality more than on the methodology. Richards and Rogers, 1986. Advantages. In the direct method, students and teacher are partners in the learning process, and there is a large amount of learner-learner interaction. The process follows the natural order in which a child learns L1, that is, listening, speaking, reading and writing. Among the advantages, the direct method. It lays great emphasis on speaking, the most important skill for many learners. Students learn the correct pronunciation and better oral skills because no native language is used and communication is main activity in the class. It overcomes the unnatural block of translation in the communication process. Learners learn the language, not about the language. Learners have an active role. Lively classroom procedures motivate the learner. The learning is contextualized. The focus on speech gives it attractive for those who need real communication in L2. The teaching of vocabulary through realia brings authenticity into the classroom. Shortcomings. While the direct method was successful, it fell short of satisfying the requirements of educational systems. This is in part due to the fact that what made it difficult to implement in the public schools. Brown, 1994-56, claims that the direct method did not take well in public education where the constraints of budget, classroom size, time, and teacher background made such a method difficult to use. The direct method was criticized due to the following reasons. In this method all the language activities are related to the classroom context, and not to real-life situations. Therefore, learners are not prepared to use the foreign language for communication as the teachers do not think of them using it outside the confines of the classroom. Direct method is often used in private language schools because it can be applied only in small classes, where all the learners can receive individual attention. When using the direct method, teachers constantly succeed in keeping the mother tongues of their students out of sight. It requires a lot of time since it is difficult to point out the meanings of the difficult words through the use of objects and dramatization, especially with the abstract words. It requires a highly competent teacher who is very fluent in the foreign language and a great number of class hours as most of the work is done in the classroom. The direct method requires learners to communicate orally in their second language and it also needs pronunciation and accent to be just like native speakers, so the language school will usually have to hire native speakers which can be very costly. This method does not consider all aspects of language teaching. It focuses much on speech and does not emphasize other skills, such as reading, writing, hearing, etc. Most times students make spelling errors. There is not enough writing, there is not enough reading. Emphasis on oral appeal is defective. This method is based on the principle of oral appeal. There are children who learn more with the support of their eyes than with that of ears and tongue. Such individuals are affected. Lack of suitable teachers. Most of our teachers in English have an inaccurate pronunciation of English. Their knowledge of English is also limited and imperfect. They face difficulties to handle the classes. This paucity of good English teachers is responsible for the failure of this method. The direct method is expensive. The classrooms cannot give suitable equipment and other facilities that are necessary to follow this method. Insufficient standard textbooks. There are not enough textbooks that are properly graded in grammar and composition. There is difficulty in explanation. We normally follow 4 ways to describe the words. The direct method completely ignores translation. As a result, it becomes difficult to explain ideas. The direct method does not consider human nature and the student's nature of acquiring a language. A student cannot learn English ignoring the mother tongue altogether. This method failed to obtain the desired goal. Conclusion. The direct method insists upon speech from the beginning and avoids close association between the mother tongue and the foreign, English, language. The direct method seeks to teach a language by usage and not by rule, so it opposes the teaching of formal grammar. It doesn't favor the teaching of formal grammar at the early stage. The direct method was quite successful in private language schools where paying clients had high motiva negation tion and the use of native-speaking teachers was the norm. But, after a short popularity in the beginning of the 20th century, it soon began to lose its appeal because it failed to consider the practical realities of the classroom. It then paved the way to the emergence of the audiolingual method.